Three horses walk up to a closed gate. Sounds like a bad joke to start off our morning, doesn't it? All three horses stop. They look at each other, not knowing what to do next. The first horse steps back a little and attempts to survey all of the options, but doesn't seem to think any option will work. While the first horse is thinking, the second horse backs up a little, takes off running at full speed in an attempt to jump the gate. At full speed, the horse leaps as high as the horse can leap and gives it all that he has, only to have his leg catch the gate, causing him to fall to the ground. The third horse looks at his two friends in disbelief and gently nudges his nose against the latch on the gate and pushes it open so that he can walk through the gate. The point of the story is confidence can be tricky for a lot of people. Some people, like the first horse, take the approach of, let me stand back, let me survey all the options, but then they to only feel so uncertain in themselves that no option seems to work. All of them seem impossible. Therefore, they end up doing nothing and fail to act at all. Others, like the second horse, boy, they shine with confidence, don't they? Oh, it's just gleaming off of them. So much confidence at times that they think they can accomplish any task because of their own ability, their own strength, their own logic, their own wisdom. Yet they fail because they are putting their confidence, they're putting their hope, they're depending on themselves instead of seeing the proper perspective right there before them. Yet others act like the third horse, who look around and they're confused why this person over here seems so unconfident, and yet this person over here seems so overly confident. Why is this person scared and this person seems so over the top? Instead of him thinking he needs to jump the gate or find some other way around, he realizes, we talked on Wednesday night, he understands that someone has already opened the gate for him and he just has to walk through it. This morning, I want us to examine three different types of confidence and ensure that we have the right perspective and are placing our hope and trust in the right person. As we break down the three different types of confidence, we're going to break them down into subgroups as well, into two further categories. One dealing with our physical life and the other one dealing with our spiritual life. I make this distinction because so many people in the world today link confidence with completing a task here on earth. But we need to also realize that we need to have the proper confidence in completing the race of life and receiving the reward that is heaven. Therefore, as we look at our first type of confidence this morning, we see a person who is lacking confidence, or the first horse from our story just a moment ago. Now, having a lack of confidence, it isn't something new to the world today. It isn't something new to our current generation or just a couple of generations before us. Not having confidence in oneself is something that people have dealt with for generation and generation. It's been going on for a very long time. You could even say that the traits of a flawed confidence were present in the Garden of Eden. However, one of the earliest and most popular stories that we have recorded for us of someone who dealt with the lack of confidence ended up being noted for his great faith in Hebrews 11. That person is Moses. If you remember correctly, Moses had struck down an Egyptian in Exodus 2 for beating a Hebrew, and he hid his body in the sand before he fled to Midian. Later on, at the start of Exodus 3, Moses ends up having a conversation with the angel of the Lord who appeared in a burning bush, telling him that he is going to go back to Egypt, a place that he had just fled, and lead his people out of captivity. Only for Moses in Exodus 3:11 to say this, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" Who am I? Later on, Moses in Exodus 4:1 goes on to say, "But behold, they will not believe, they will not listen to my voice." They won't listen. They won't believe. Then after the Lord had given him the ability to turn his rod into a snake and he could turn his hand leprous, Moses still finds it hard to believe and still have confidence in himself. And he gives us words that most of us have probably said or thought throughout our life. Listen to this conversation recorded for us in Exodus 4, 10 through 17. But Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue. Then the Lord said to him, Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. But he said, O my Lord, please send someone else. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take in your hand this staff with which you shall do the signs. Listen to some of the things here that Moses lists off as reasons up to this point. Number 1, who am I? Number 2, they will not believe or listen to my voice. Third thing he says, I am not eloquent, but of slow of speech and tongue. The fourth, please send someone else. When you think about our confidence today, we so often can fall into the same trap as Moses did. From a life perspective, we can time and time again come back to the phrase, who am I? The mindset of thinking I'm not good enough for anything. I'm just so-and-so from so-and-so place, and I work so-and-so job, and I'm so-and-so this and so-and-so that, and on we go, and therefore, who am I? Let me be as clear and just as straight to the point as possible. When this question arises in our head or arises with someone around us, when we hear this, anyone say this, let us shift our minds to the answer of, who am I? Well, who are you? You're a person that was purchased with the blood of Christ. It's 1 Peter 1:19. You're a person who is made in the image of God. Genesis 1:27. You're a person that is loved very, very, very dearly by the Creator of the world. 1 John 4:16. You are a person that the Creator of the world wants to spend eternity with. 1 Timothy 2:4. So who are you? Well, you're someone so extremely precious and special in the eyes of God, in the eyes of the Creator. You are His handiwork. You are His creation. Oh, you're something meaningful to Him. Oh, you're something special to Him. It's not a, well, who am I? But instead it's a, I belong to the great I am. So family, let's never let this thought creep into our minds. Let's vanish it. Let's flee from it. Let's leave it in the past. Also, if you notice, Moses allows the first thought to creep into the second thought. Because if we fail to have confidence in who we are and who we belong to, we are surely going to fail or fall into the trap of thinking, well, no one's going to believe me. No one's going to listen to me. Moses, just like us, was sent to proclaim a message from God. Now, Moses and Aaron were given that message to speak the words to Pharaoh. We have been given the words to speak too, have we not? Have we not been given the beautiful and perfect gospel message to take it to all? We don't need to be consumed with the thought of they won't believe or they won't listen. What we need to be consumed with is the thought of I must tell everyone so that someone will listen and so that someone will believe, so someone will obey. Flip the mindset. It's not about the ones who won't believe and who won't listen, although that is extremely tragic and very sad. It's about the ones who will listen, the ones who will believe, the ones who will obey. Because when they listen and when they believe and when they obey, guess what happens? Rejoicing takes place in heaven, as we can see in Luke 15:7. That's what's beautiful about our life and about our message that we can share with people. Now that person can have confidence and insurance of heaven. Boy, people spend all kinds of money getting life insurance. All kinds of money on car insurance and home insurance and any insurance you could put insurance on. But do you have the insurance of heaven? Do you have the insurance, the plan that God's given you? He's already paid for it. You ain't have a premium. He's already taken care of it. You just have to sign the line. It's there before you. So family, don't be caught up in all the people who won't listen or don't care what you have to say. But instead, consume your time with finding people who will listen and who will care. People are seeking for the truth, and people are willing to listen still today. So while we are on this earth, let us share the message of hope, of redemption, of love, of forgiveness. Now, once again, you can see that Moses let one lack of confidence lead to another. It starts with not believing in himself, and it goes to people not believing and people not listening. And next he says, I'm really not good at speaking anyways. You kind of see this trickle down. Eventually you get to what the real truth is, the more you go on to it. He said, I'm not really good at speaking anyways. As I like to say, circle, highlight, underline this reasoning right here. If I had to take a random guess, this would be the biggest reason why people fail to share the gospel, not only today, but in times past. They either don't feel equipped to share the message, or they're afraid someone might ask them a question that they don't know the answer to. Or they think that they maybe can't put it into the right words. I can't say it eloquently enough, as Moses would say, for someone to convince someone to believe. Again, let's reset our mindset. Let's reset the way we're thinking and understand that we most definitely can be equipped if we want to, if we desire to. Spending time in the Word, spending time in prayer, praying without ceasing, spending time on spiritual things instead of worldly things. That is what can help us be equipped, and it should be something that we want to do. Not only that, we shouldn't be scared of someone asking a question that we don't know the answer to. You ever struggle to get into a Bible study? If they don't know the answer and you don't know the answer, what do you have? You should have a Bible study where you can both come to the conclusion of truth. So let us not fall into the trap of feeling like we don't speak well enough to share the message, especially in this day and age where you can share it in 1,000 different formats, it seems. We don't have to make the message all fancy and all eloquent and all this, that, and the other, because God has already presented and given to us a perfect and wonderfully wisdom-filled message. We just have to share it. The words of wisdom Jesus has already provided, and salvation has already been prepared and is placed right before all of us. So this should never turn into a, can you please just send someone else? But instead it should turn into a, Lord, can you please send me? A Lord, will you please allow me? A Lord, I'm all in. That's what it should be. It should be, Lord, can you please send anyone else? Lord, please send me. Let not our confidence be weak or faint, but instead let us depend, let us rely on the Creator of the world. Now, to this point, let us also not have a weak confidence when it comes to our salvation in Christ. You can see this all throughout the world today. We are going to touch on this thought here just in a little bit, but I promise you that the Lord has promised you that the blood of Christ is more than capable to cover all your sins and bring salvation among mankind. Some people today feel like their past is just too bad. Their past is too rough. I would let you go read the story of Saul. Murdering, persecuting Christians, persecuting people of the way. He said, I'm the chief of this. I'm the chief of sinning. Did the blood of Christ cover him? Absolutely. And it can cover you today. Your past, it can be your past for a reason. Your past does not define your present and your future. It doesn't have to, unless you never want to leave your past. But your past can be the past, and you can live in the future that is so bright and so grand. Don't let your past define your future. Therefore, we must not have a lack of confidence, but we must not also have too much confidence, especially in the wrong things, which is our second point. While you can find numerous stories throughout the Bible with people that have too much confidence, well, they were puffed up with pride, they're greatly dependent on themselves, one of the most fascinating passages, in my opinion, about this topic is something that we make out to be a kid's story all of the time. When you read the story of Goliath, you see a person that had a whole bunch of confidence. He had so much that he didn't know what to do with it. You could say that he got a little too big for his britches, didn't he? And he's a big old guy. He still had too much confidence. And for 40 days, he would come out and he would just mock the army of Israel. Come on out. How about you send someone to fight me? Just daring them, taunting, making fun of God. So as we read this story in 1 Samuel 17, we can see a lot of characteristics that we need to ensure are not part of our life today. And before you just tune me out and say, I'm just nothing like Goliath, there's nothing about me that's like Goliath, hear me out. Most people in the world today think that we have a lack of confidence issue. They think everyone just doesn't have confidence in themselves. But I actually believe that we have maybe a bigger or equal issue with having an overconfidence in the world today. And I'm going to explain that as we start in 1 Samuel 17, starting in verse 4. It says this, "And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits in a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and then the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron." Man, it's a good resume, isn't it? You put that'll get you a job on Indeed, won't it? That's a pretty good resume. Look at the measurements for just a second here. And let's put this into terms that kind of bring it in more to something for us today. His height, 6 cubits in a span, which equates to 116 inches, or 9 feet 7 inches, for reference. Shaquille O'Neal, big old guy in the NBA, broke a couple backboards, didn't he? 7'1". Yao Ming was actually even taller. He played for the Houston Rockets. He's 7'6". I'm probably going to mispronounce his last name, but the tallest person in the world today, Sultan Kosin, I don't know how you pronounce it, he is 8'2", the world's tallest man today. He ain't 9'7". That's how big Goliath was. What about his coat? Weighed 5,000 shekels, which equates to 55,000 grams, or 121 pounds. The most common bowling ball is 15 pounds, which means you would need to carry 8 of them just to make up the weight of his coat. Anybody here going to start holding 8 bowling balls? You've got me beat. The average weight of a microwave, 30 to 50 pounds, which means his coat would equal about 3 or 4 microwaves. It's a heavy load carrying in from Home Depot, isn't it? The average weight of a bag of groceries, this is my favorite one, can weigh between 15 to 30 pounds, which means you need to carry at least 4 to 8 bags to equate the weight of his coat. There's a bunch of younger guys in here that are probably like, I do that on a weekly basis. I carry in 15 bags all the time from the car because I refuse to make more than one trip. It's a lot of bags, isn't it? Just to cover the weight of his coat. Firefighter gears weigh up to 150 pounds sometimes. A soldier's uniform in battle, if they're going out, can reach up to 120 pounds. What about his spear? 600 shekels of iron, which equates to about 14.5 pounds. Can you imagine just slinging around a 15-pound dumbbell? I can't, right? I can't do that. It's a lot of weight. The point is, Goliath was extremely large and a very strong opponent. His height and his strength was obvious to everybody around. Everybody knew it. He knew that he was taller than everybody. He knew that he was stronger than everybody. He knew that no one could beat him with a one-on-one battle. He knew it. And everyone else thought the same thing. Oh, he was so confident. So confident that little old David came out of battle and he said this. Goliath said this to David in 1 Samuel 17:43. Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? Just mocking him. Am I a dog? Goliath fell into the mindset of being too great to fall, the mindset of being invincible and nothing being able to stop him. I fear that too many people today actually fall into the same mindset without realizing it. We become overly confident in our own ability to handle whatever task is before us. We fail to pray because we've already made up our decision on how we want to handle something. We fail to lean on God because we feel like we're strong enough by ourselves to overcome whatever is before us. But more than anything, and hear me out on this one, more than anything, I believe far too many people today have become overly confident in a salvation that they take for granted. Now, hear me out on this. Overly confident in a salvation that they think will just be handed to them because of who they are. You go back and look at the history of the Jews, even Jesus' time. It just needs to be handed to us because we belong to Abraham. Overly confident in a salvation that they simply believe is due to them because they checked off the box every Sunday. Well, I showed up on Sunday. Don't matter what I do Monday through Saturday. I checked off the box. Salvation is just due to me, isn't it? If you were to poll the average person in our communities today, I would guess that a large majority of them are confident that they will inherit heaven. Yet they hardly attend church, they hardly pray, they hardly read their Bible. They are putting in next to nothing and expect everything from the Father. Do we have an overconfident problem in the world today? Family, I'm not saying that we have to be unsure of our final destination or have a lack of confidence when it comes to our salvation. But we do all need to stop and have a long moment of reflection and make sure that our life is on the right track. The moment of reflection could help us correct something in our life to get our life on the right track if it's not right now. The moment of reflection could help us realize that maybe we aren't actually giving God our full attention, our full heart, our full soul. Maybe we are just giving Him the leftovers. You can see that in Malachi, the book of Malachi. Go read that. They were struggling to give God their best. Are we struggling with that today? Look at Goliath. He was so confident. He thought he could do whatever he wanted and nothing could take him down. He was too strong. He was too big. He was this and that. But none of that mattered because his confidence was on himself instead of the one above. So often, I think people just assume attending church means you're going to heaven. Other people think, well, all good people go to heaven, don't they? So often in the world today, I heard another brother mention this. I don't remember who it was, so I can't give him credit. So often in our world today, we like to compare ourselves to the people sitting to our left or to our right, the people we see in everyday life. Well, I'm pretty good compared to that person. I'm pretty good compared. I must be doing pretty good. If you go back and you look at the time of Noah, what if Noah was to go out and look at himself and compare himself to everybody else? Everybody except the 8 was corrupt. Sometimes in our world today, we can sit there and compare ourselves to a corrupt world. We need to be comparing ourselves to the gold standard. The gold standard is who? Christ. That's the gold standard. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to one another. Now, we should be building one another up. We should be comparing ourselves to one another because Christ is the gold standard. Christ is the gold standard. Others are going to believe that you can just work your way into heaven. If I do enough good deeds, heaven must be mine. Yet others will believe this and that and the other. Yet the only way into heaven is through Christ and the sacrifice that He has provided so that we can have the ultimate grace and the ultimate forgiveness for all of us. Not for some, but for all of us that want to partake in it. Goliath was missing the point of life, and we need to make sure that we don't follow his example. Heaven is such a wonderful place, and we don't need to miss it because work requires too much of us. Heaven is such a wonderful place, we don't need to miss it because we're too busy doing this, that, and the other, and we can't give time to God. We don't need to miss something as wonderful as heaven over something temporary on earth. Family, I implore you to reflect and make sure that we are not overconfident when it comes to our salvation. Are we giving God our best? Are we all in? Or are we 1 foot on and 1 foot off? Where are we at? The greatest lie that Satan uses today, and he's used it for probably as long as we could count, the phrase, don't worry about it. You're all good. Don't worry about it. You're saved. You don't need to do anything. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to pray. You don't have to, change anything in your life. Just come as you are and never change. You're all good. Family, he is the father of lies, and we need to be careful and be sure that we are examining our lives, making sure that we're on the right track. Following Christ is the most important decision you can ever make in your life because it affects eternity. It affects something after this life. You don't want to arrive on Judgment Day and say, but I thought I was good. I thought I had everything worked out. Only to hear, I never knew you. I never knew you. Family, we must ensure that we have the proper confidence when it comes to our salvation. When you examine the story of David and Goliath, you see one person who is overly confident in himself. But you see another person who is perfectly confident in the Father. So as we turn to our third and final point of the morning, we could look throughout the Bible and we could find countless people who showed the proper amount of confidence and faith. Abraham, when offering up Isaac, Lord's going to provide. Noah was given instructions to build the ark. Boy, I bet he looked crazy to everybody, didn't he? Just 8 of them. Out there building an ark, it ain't even rained. And then it did. Joshua and Caleb, even though the other 10 spies brought back a bad report, they had the faith and the confidence because they knew it was what? The promised land, and it was promised to them. Paul, when he was in prison, did he let that stop him? Boy, they could beat him and kick him out of town. He just kept on going. On and on we could go, and we could look at people who had the proper confidence. But when you look at the story of Goliath, you see Goliath who is so overly confident, and it's so easy to see the flip side and see the person who has the proper confidence, David. What I like so much about David is he seems like just such a normal guy. He's just such an unsuspected character in this. He wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the most talented. He wasn't the most trained. He didn't even have the best armor, did he? No, he didn't. Yet David didn't depend on his height like Goliath did. David didn't depend on his own strength like Goliath did. David didn't depend on his armor like Goliath did. David didn't depend on any of those worldly things. But instead, he said this in 1 Samuel 17, starting in verse 31. When the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with the Philistine." And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth." But when David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered him out of its mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by the beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." And David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." As you break down this powerful message, this powerful response from David, you can see so many applications for our life today and the confidence that we should have. David starts out by saying something that I don't think we say to one another enough today. Let no man's heart fail because of him. Prevent heart failure, I guess you could say. Oftentimes in life, we can allow the actions of others to rob us of our joy, to distract us from the promise that's right there before us of heaven. It robs us of the freedom that we find in Christ. Family, we can't allow our hearts to fail because the world has decided to go further and further into corruption. Could you imagine if Noah allowed this to happen when building the ark? Well, ain't no one believe me. It ain't rained no ways. This is taking forever. Why are we even doing this anymore? And he stopped. What would have happened when it flooded? He'd have been gone just like the rest of them. There was 8 of them. Now, I ain't good at math, but there's more than 8 people here today. The world was very dark then. It's still dark today, but we still have a mission ahead of us. We still have a home waiting for us. We must not allow our hearts to fail because the world is taunting us and mocking us. They did the same thing to Jesus. We must not allow our hearts to fail simply because the obstacles before us seem too tough or too impossible. Nothing's impossible with him. Family, we must be here for one another so that we can lift one another up, so that we can encourage one another, so that we can ensure that God's children their hearts don't fail because of the evils of this world. The second thing that you can see from David is that he's prepared to go. He doesn't say, don't let man's heart fail, and please send someone else to fight for me. He doesn't say that. No, David sees the opportunity ahead of him, and he doesn't look to pass off the responsibility, but instead he decides to lead by his actions. Can you imagine if more Christians did that today? We could make an impact, couldn't we? Boy, this world's got a lot of darkness, and we could be a whole lot of lights. Family, let us learn from this example. So often in life, people will wait for someone else to do the task. That's not my job. Someone else get that. They will take the approach of someone else will tell that person about Christ. Well, someone else will surely help that person in need. Well, someone will surely do this or will do that. Might I add that someone could very easily be you or me or any of us, any of God's children? Oh, David could have passed it off, but he didn't, and we shouldn't either. We need to not be looking for reasons to be on the sideline, but we need to be looking for reasons to be in the game and playing and active, working for the kingdom. And you can see from the response of Saul, David could have put himself on the sideline because, well, he was too young, because he wasn't trained in war. But David didn't allow those things to stop him, but instead David gives these 5 words that can apply to all of our lives today. The Lord who delivered me. He goes on to say, from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. The Lord who delivered me. As I mentioned at the beginning, confidence can be a tricky thing for a lot of people, but it shouldn't be for a child of God. People in the world can have a lack of confidence because they feel that they themselves are not good enough. Others might have too much confidence, thinking that because they are so strong, so tall, so smart, so this, that, or the other, they can handle anything. But a Christian should know and understand that they don't have the power to do anything. But instead, the power comes from above. The power comes from the Father. We can face today because we have a Savior that's conquered the grave. We can face tomorrow because we have a Savior who's conquered the grave. We know that we can face today because the promise of heaven is so grand. And we have a God who makes promises and keeps promises. We shouldn't lack confidence because we know who has delivered us thus far and who will deliver us on our final day. We shouldn't be overly confident because we know that our strength comes from the Lord. Therefore, just as David looked at a task that the world said, or the men of Israel at least, said was impossible, you can't overcome that. That's why they kept waiting 40 days. They kept waiting because this can't be overcome. How are we going to do this? We too can look at a task that the world says is impossible and overcome it. What's the task that the world says is impossible you can't overcome? Death. This world. Family, when you become a child of God, you can become extremely confident in your final destination. You can become extremely confident in the fact that you will overcome death, that you will overcome this world, 1 John 5 and 4. You can be confident that you are on the side of the great I am, the only side that you want to be on. Family, what type of confidence do you have this morning? It's the question that we all need to ask ourselves. Some days it might feel like it's a good old East Tennessee weather forecast, and we fit into all 3 categories depending on which way the wind blows. The morning we might feel one way, lunch we might feel different, dinner, boy, it's like I got to put my jacket back on. Feel all different kinds of ways. We can't let that be so. If you have too much confidence, remember who holds the key, and never forget that you are the clay and He is the potter. If you struggle with confidence, remember who you belong to. Remember who cares for you. Remember who loves you. If you feel your confidence in the right spot, beautiful. perfect, awesome, amazing. Let's go be a light and inspiration to this world out here, because it needs a whole bunch of it, doesn't it? This morning, I don't know what your answer might be. I don't know what your confidence is. But I do know one thing for certain. And that's if you need to make a change of any kind in your life, you still can, because the Lord's patience is still allowing it. Maybe you're here this morning and your lack of confidence comes from the fact that you've not contacted the blood of Christ. You've not given your life to Christ. Maybe your lack of confidence this morning comes from the fact that you know there's things in your life that you need to change that could hinder you from obtaining the wonders of heaven. I have good news. The good news is the patience of the Lord is still active. And you can change that today. As I said earlier, your past does not get to define your future unless you decide it does. Your past was what happened when you walked in here. That's your past. Your future is what happens when you walk out the door. Your future can be in the arms of Christ if you decide to make that decision this morning. You could have come in already contacting the blood, but fallen away from it. You can leave here back in contact, step for step with it. And I know what some of you may be thinking, well, I'm just visiting here while I'm on vacation, and I'll get that cleaned up when I get back home. I'll contact that blood when I get back home at this church that I go to. My answer is, why wait? Don't put the Lord off any longer. Don't put him off any longer. Might I also add this comment? We have these little things in front of us. Glenn mentioned it. We have visitor cards. That has a terrible name for them, because they should be called extended family cards. Because whether you live here locally or whether you're visiting from another town, we're all part of the family of God. It's just extended family. You're extended family. And you're not a visitor here because this church doesn't belong to us. This church belongs to Christ, who is the head of it. So if you have anything, whether you're a visitor or whether you're a local, if you have anything that you need to make right this morning, if you've not contacted the blood, you've not given your life to Christ, you can do that this morning. And the family of God that reaches far and wide all across this world can help you this morning. So if you have a need or want to give your life to Christ, come forward as we stand and as we sing. Thank you.